Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And in this 10-minute moan, I'm going to look at some of the outrageous claims made by John Swinney and explain why they are total nonsense. Okay? Before I start, if you want to support the channel, you can become a member or you can subscribe, that's free. Or the best thing you can do, the quickest thing, is click that thumbs up button anytime you see a video. Thank you. Now, John Swinney has made a speech on Sunday explaining how he's going to present himself as the First Minister. There was a few things that I thought were absolutely shocking in his speech. One of the ones that made me chortle, though, was when he was first paying homage to his predecessor, Hamza Yousaf, and he declared to the nation that one of Hamza's best things he'd done over the last 13 months was how he handled the Gaza crisis, during which time, or some of that time, he had family in Gaza. So, what we have to believe then is his biggest input as the First Minister of Scotland in 13 months was how he reacted to somebody else's actions. Not anything he done. And we got this word, this phrase that gets trotted out almost endlessly now, which started off as, we have taken 100,000 kids out of adverse poverty, to now, things that we've done will take 100,000 kids out of poverty. And I put on record as suggesting that in the not too distant future, it should have, but it'll be somebody else's fault why it didn't. Because that's what the SNP do. That's what the SNP do with everything they've ever touched. Mr. Swinney also declares that he's now ready to work with unionist parties. Mr. Swinney now suggests that there'll be no more shouting in Parliament. Too little, too late, John. This party have governed the country for 17 years? Now, it's funny because the last time any of the leaders had any sort of relationship with any other leaders in that house was Mr. Salmond. And guess what? You had a minority government at the time. So now you get a minority government again. And guess what? Everybody else is to decide to work with you. What was wrong when the last 10 years you worked with everybody else? It didn't happen. It couldn't happen. Because your only sole driver had to be independence. And if it wasn't, why would you exist? It's like the Green Party, who were started to be environmentalists now, are more concerned about LGBT rights, etc., giving drugs to children who are in the middle of confused states in their life. That's you, just on a different scale. And the unionist parties, and indeed all parties apart from the Greens, should tell you quite clearly to ram it. You're now stating that your party are willing to work with unionist parties. But let me tell you something. You couldn't even work with an independence party. That's how we ended up in this mess. Because let's not kid ourselves. The real reason that Hamza Yousaf isn't here is because he was prepared to work and listen to Alba. But your party hierarchy couldn't stomach that. And the reason you couldn't stomach it is simply because of who started and who runs the Alba party. You put that before the governance of this country. And that's quite frankly shocking. And your independence lovers and your cult, which are in ever decreasing numbers, the penny should actually drop with them. That independence is becoming a fallacy for you. Now, let me just explain how this bit works. I have been saying for a long time that we need a government that should put India in the back burner, put it to bed, And for the next session, which would be 5 years, we get on with governing the country. You can't do that. And the reason you can't do that is if you wanted to do that and you put that in a manifesto or suggested that in Parliament, the cult would want you hung, drawn and quartered. You would become the traitors. There are already people in your party who accuse you of having no indication on how you're actually going to get independence and have actually put it in the back burner. And they're leaving you in your droves. So, can you imagine if you actually put the big boy pants on, the penny dropped, and you wanted to put independence on the back burner and just to sort Scotland out? There would be a war within the independence movement. People who actually said, that makes sense, common sense and logic, I can understand that. And those who are so deranged by India at all costs, just couldn't happen. And I'm sick hearing everything will be all right once we get independence. If your party had decided in 2014, we've got a book of rules here, Scotland has ignored, rejected your plea for independence. That's what happened at the referendum. I'm fed up hearing Scotland get dragged out of the EU, and that's unfair, by people who are trying to drag us out the UK, who lost the referendum. That beggars belief and is absolutely potty. So, that can't happen. And I'm fed up hearing, I'll be all right after independence. We'll get all the powers. What powers do you not have right now that is stopping you actually running a country? If you cannot govern with the powers you do have, I don't know what difference it'll make giving you some more. Because that's actually a downside for you, that's how I see it, because you couldn't blame everybody else. Being able to blame Westminster or Brexit or the Tories, if you actually had independence, you wouldn't be able to blame these people. And another thing I find incredible is if referendum had been won by the Yes campaign back in 2014, me as a unionist was expected to suck it up and get on with it. Drop the dreams I had of remaining in the union and get on with this unicorn, William Wallace, Mel Gibson version of Scotland that you're painting. However, the independence movement didn't do that. The independence movement didn't accept it and have fought kicking and screaming every year since. And they couldn't wait to get something to cling to. And it seems to have been this, the Brexit, that was a mandate for a referendum. You don't have a mandate. When did the SNP or the independence parties receive the majority of the votes in any election, never mind a referendum? So there is no mandate. You can cry all you like about opinion polls, but opinion polls are actually probably at a lower level than now for independence than they were prior to the vote in 2014. So you can't say, the independence polls are polling higher than the result. Well, they're polling higher than the actual result back in 2014. That's a mute argument. If you want to compare opinion polls, compare it to opinion polls in 2014. Because you can't compare it to the referendum, because it didn't match, I think, all bar one opinion poll. So it's just all bluster. It's just absolute bluster. But that's the decrepit excuse of a party. What Scotland needs right now is a big boy pants on. What Scotland needs is a 5-year cycle at least with people who are going to get into Parliament and treat this like a business and find out what the costs are and find out what the incomes are. Try and make the income as much as possible and the outgoings as little as possible, at least less than the income. That's how a business works. We can't do that. Because we have a House, a Parliament full of people who want to say the sky is blue, and someone will argue it's not. Someone will argue the grass is green and the opposition say it's not. That's not how we sort Scotland. Scotland doesn't have a parliament. It's a stupid name. Right? Let's just face facts. It's a glorified council. And glorified councils balance the books. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel here. But to remain in power, what the SNP have had to do is bow to the idiotic party, the Scottish Greens. And nothing that they've brought to the table has actually came to fruition. They do claim, however, that this rent freeze in some way is a victory. Aye. Go and tell that to the landlords. Go and tell that to the people who actually create the money. And I'm fed up hearing the Greens version of redistribution of wealth, which means those who can get the money taken off them and those who won't get given it. Society does deserve to look after those who can't work. And the people who can need to pay that burden. That is normal society. But what we see, and far too big a number, is those who won't contribute. Not those that can't. That's a different thing. And the country's been run for those who won't. And do you want me to back that up? Go and look at everything that's given away free. That is to appease those who won't, not those who can't. And the minute we can figure that out, how we differentiate between the can'ts and the won'ts, we then become a better society. Because those who won't just now can contribute if they have to, but we make it so easy for them not to. And those who can't always deserve to be looked after by those who can. But those who can are bearing the burden for two groups now, those who can't and those who won't. And that doesn't make sense to me. And when you see Ross Greer standing up telling everybody he demands a redistribution of wealth, that's fantastic. That is absolutely crackers, that. So what I'll do is, if given the choice, is just do nothing, and those who do something have to subsidise me. That's no society. That's communism. And you're not fooling me anymore. So, I think I've ranted on enough. And just let's get rid of this mob. When it comes to election time, let's get rid of the SNP. And I don't mean voting them out. I mean get rid of them, full stop. Bankrupt them. As soon as the election's called, I'll go into overdrive on that campaign to try and bankrupt the SNP. No kidding on. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please subscribe. And unless you are the SNP, the ever-dwindling cult, or even these crackpots in the Scottish Greens, everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.